Well, investment in robot technology to create driverless cars has already passed the $1 billion mark, with these vehicles expected to be hitting our highways by 2020. Now, whether you want to drive one or whether you don't, I really don't know if you're going to have a whole lot of option in the future. I'm talking with Shara Evans, futurist. Thanks for giving us the time, Shara.
Hi, Anthony. It's my pleasure.
Now, this is going to have huge implications, obviously, in so many areas. Look, what if you drive a bus or a taxi or a truck for a living? Is that the end of your career if these cars come in?
At some point, it probably will be. Let me give you a bit of a timeline. In about 2020 is when we're going to see a lot of commercial manufacturers have models in the showroom that have an autopilot mode, and that's where it's going to be the robot driving the car. But they're not going to be 100% autopilot all the time. I suspect that they'll be used primarily on highways at first, much like auto park in some of the top-end cars. You'll see it in the top-end cars, and then it will gradually come down into a much wider class of vehicles. By 2025, I think that we'll see somewhere in the order of 20 to 50 million vehicles around the world, which will have an autopilot mode that's used sometimes. But by 2030, you won't be able to buy a vehicle that doesn't have autonomous driving capabilities. And I think around that time frame, or maybe even sooner, we're going to see governments start to legislate the use of autopilot mode, first on highways and then later everywhere. It's going to have an impact on jobs, but it's also going to impact people who have older model cars. And I think that we'll see a whole industry spring up of people in shops that retrofit autonomous driving capabilities onto older cars as well.
That's phenomenal. Talking with Shara Evans, futurist. Shara, we're going to play a song and then come back. I want to ask you about how does insurance work out with all of this?
Okay.
We're back talking with Shara Evans, futurist, about the impact of driverless cars that's going to be happening in our society, particularly in the future, looking at around the years of 2020, 2021. And Shara, one of the things I wanted to ask you about was the implications for insurance in the event of an accident. Always intrigued me.
It's going to be complex, Anthony, because one of the first things that will have to be determined is whether a human was driving a car at the time of the accident or a robot was driving a car. And if a robot was driving a car, who's liable for whatever has happened? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it a part manufacturer, perhaps? Or is it the person who designed the software that might have caused the accident? So I think that we're going to start seeing vehicles fitted with onboard storage to be able to store what has happened in a vehicle at certain points of time. It may be stored in the cloud, and that there'll be a forensic science that comes up to help determine who's at fault. And it's not just insurance. It's also law enforcement, because if the incident involved property or loss of life or traffic violations, then cops will want to know who's at fault too. There's a really funny story that happened about a week ago. A Google driverless car was pulled over, and I think it was California that it happened in. It wasn't for going too fast, it was going for too slow. Oh. And the police officer didn't know what to do because there was nobody driving the car. There was a passenger in there, but there was no one behind the steering wheel.
Great to talk with you. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Same here, Anthony. Thank you.